U.S. pushes for World Bank to end loans to China in effort to suppress CCP. China's iron rice bowl cracks, millions face job losses over next decade. Report: China's real estate crisis is far from bottoming out, house prices have only fallen by half. Great Depression, office vacancy rates in Beijing and Shanghai hit record highs. Chinese-made EV owners struggle for power during Lunar New Year. It's all covered in today's China Truths. U.S. pushes for World Bank to end loans to China in effort to suppress CCP. The World Bank is known for its support to impoverished countries via loans. Meanwhile, the Chinese Communist Party boasts about eliminating poverty nationwide, all while extending its financial influence abroad and benefiting from the World Bank's low-interest loans. Recently, during a House Financial Services Committee hearing on February 6, U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has indicated that the Biden administration is actively advocating for the World Bank to cease its lending to China. This stance taken by the Biden administration is indicative of the broader perspective held by the United States and Western countries towards the CCP. Professor Xia Tian from the University of South Carolina's Darla Moore School of Business shared insights, noting, initially, there is minimal interest from Biden in boosting the World Bank's capital because the CCP also holds positions within the World Bank and the International Monetary and Financial Committee. An increase in capital would likely see the CCP seizing the opportunity to contribute more funds, thereby amplifying its influence. Professor Xia further remarked that the United States aims to limit the CCP's influence, considering the World Bank currently has ample capital. The U.S. is well aware of the CCP's ambitions and strategies, intending to thwart their success. Another aspect is the perception by the United States and Western nations that China no longer qualifies as a developing country. No genuine developing country has the capability to independently launch satellites, deploy missiles, or construct high-speed rail networks. Given this classification of China as a developed nation, it should not be eligible for preferential loans from the World Bank or the International Monetary Fund. Observers note that as the World Bank's largest contributor, the United States may withdraw financial support for international bodies to prevent the CCP from emerging as the primary beneficiary, thereby averting further global risks. Under former U.S. President Trump's administration, the U.S. exited at least 12 international entities, including the United Nations Human Rights Council and the World Health Organization, criticizing that the U.S. disproportionately financed these organizations which, in some cases, seem to be unduly influenced by the CCP. In December 2019, the World Bank approved a plan to extend low-interest loans ranging from $1 to $1.5 billion annually to China until June 2025. Trump openly questioned the rationale behind these loans to a financially robust China, suggesting such practices should be halted. Taiwanese financial expert Huang Shizong reflects on the extensive support China has received from international organizations, which was justified when China was considered a developing country. However, with China now recognized as a global power and the world's second-largest economy, the U.S. questions the need for continued subsidies, initiating steps to cut back on these financial aids and challenge China's developing country status. Huang also finds it peculiar that the CCP, despite founding the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank (AIIB) to support other nations, still seeks subsidies from the World Bank and other international groups under the guise of being a developing nation. Tian argues that the CCP's entitlement to preferential loans meant for developing countries is unjust to those genuinely in need, underscoring the U.S. opposition to further lending. He believes this stance effectively cuts off the CCP's access to inexpensive capital and low-interest loans from the World Bank, making it more difficult for it to survive the economic crisis. China's iron rice bowl cracks, millions face job losses over next decade. As the new year begins, we ought to focus on joyful topics, yet given the grim outlook, it's forecasted that millions of Chinese will face job loss over the next decade. The teaching profession in China, long considered a stable iron rice bowl because of its job security even in economically volatile times, is now facing an unprecedented crisis. The root cause? A significant and sustained drop in the country's birth rates, which threatens to create a surplus of teachers and widespread joblessness in the sector. The numbers are telling. Since 2017, China has seen a sharp decrease in birth rates, with over 500,000 fewer births last year alone, bringing the total to just over 9 million. This demographic shift has led to the first decrease in kindergarten and primary school enrollments in nearly 2 decades, a trend that is forcing educational institutions to consider difficult decisions, including downsizing. Chu Jiahui, a senior researcher at the Chinese National Institute of Education Sciences, highlights the inevitable impact of these demographic changes on schools, particularly in certain regions and periods, necessitating layoffs and a reduction in teacher recruitment. This situation is exacerbated by the financial strains facing local governments, struggling under the weight of an ongoing real estate crisis and the challenge of kickstarting economic growth post-pandemic. In response to the burgeoning crisis, various local governments have taken measures to control the influx of new teachers. For instance, regions like Shandong and Sichuan announced last year their plans to stop offering education-related degree programs at some higher education institutions. Moreover, the number of schools dedicated to compulsory education has been declining steadily since 2003, a trend expected to continue until 2035. This contraction is partly a strategic move to consolidate resources and adapt to the decreasing student population. A study spearheaded by Qiao Jinzhong, an education professor at Beijing Normal University, indicates that should class sizes remain unchanged, by 2035, the country will face in excess of 1.5 million primary school teachers and 370,000 secondary school teachers. The decline in school enrollments is not the only symptom of China's broader economic and social challenges. The country is witnessing widespread layoffs across various sectors, impacting a wide range of professionals, including those with advanced degrees. A white-collar worker at a private tech company voiced their disillusionment on Douyin, questioning the value of education in a market where traditional trades seem to offer more stability and growth. A retiree from Xi'an shared that local educators are struggling to receive their salaries, a situation worse than that faced by many businesses, with some households unable to afford basic necessities. The retiree said, layoffs are rampant in Xi'an, Shaanxi, and Nanjing, Jiangsu, affecting everyone, particularly PhDs. The situation has led to dire consequences, with numerous families unable to make ends meet, a dire situation indeed when even teachers are going unpaid. This confluence of demographic shifts, economic pressures, and educational challenges paints a grim picture for China's future. Report: China's real estate crisis is far from bottoming out, house prices have only fallen by half. Goldman Sachs, a leading American investment bank and asset manager, has released a comprehensive report that draws comparisons between the 2008 U.S. housing market crash and the current distress in the Chinese real estate sector. By leveraging insights from the 2008 crisis, Goldman Sachs's analysts emphasize the prolonged nature of real estate market declines and the slow path to recovery. Applying this lens to China's context, they conclude that the nation's property market turmoil is only at its midpoint, with expectations of further declines in housing prices, a slowdown in new housing projects, and a decrease in home sales looming on the horizon. Goldman Sachs analysts have calculated a 16% drop in China's housing prices from the third quarter of 2021 to the third quarter of 2023, starting from the market's peak. This observation leads to the conclusion that the adjustment in China's housing prices during its ongoing slump is merely at its midpoint. The report further notes that U.S. housing prices were about 40% overvalued at their 2006 peak. However, when comparing demographic dynamics, income levels, employment opportunities, and other economic indicators from that period in the U.S. to China's current situation, the latter's predicament appears significantly more dire. Furthermore, given the current circumstances, the downturn in China's real estate market that started in mid-2021 continues with no foreseeable end. Since reaching its peak at the end of 2020, new home construction and sales in China have decreased by 64% and 52% respectively. Considering the current situation of excess inventory in the Chinese real estate market, it is expected that both of these data will be in a sluggish state in the coming years. As a reference, during the subprime mortgage crisis in the United States, real housing prices peaked in early 2006 and only bottomed out in 2012, before returning to the long-term average level 10 years later. The report also pointed out that the core issue of the 2008 U.S. subprime mortgage crisis was the excessive amount of corresponding debt due to excessively loose mortgage standards. The core issue of China's real estate crisis is the high housing prices rooted in a unique land supply mechanism, which is influenced by many economic distortions. In other words, the real estate problem in the United States is a financial problem, while the real estate problem in China is fundamentally a fiscal problem. The Goldman Sachs report also warned that the subprime crisis in the United States had spread to a wider financial sector, resulting in serious spillover effects. If the Beijing authorities cannot control the spillover effects of the housing and real estate crisis on other economic sectors, they will also face a similar vicious cycle, and negative spillover effects may prolong the damage of the real estate downturn to the economy. It is worth mentioning that the International Monetary Fund, IMF, recently publicly warned that China is currently in a historic real estate downturn, and that only the worst crash in the past 30 years can match it. Great Depression, office vacancy rates in Beijing and Shanghai hit record highs. China's real estate market is experiencing a profound crisis, with key cities like Beijing and Shanghai seeing drastic downturns. Office space vacancy rates are hitting record highs, and rental prices are plummeting, signaling severe economic strain. A notable observation from Xiaofeng, a mainland housing blogger, reveals that Shanghai's office rents have reached a 10-year low, while Beijing is experiencing a 14-year peak in vacancy rates. Data from CBRE underscores the severity, showing vacancy rates in major cities reaching unprecedented levels by the end of 2023. Details include office vacancy rates in top-tier cities such as Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, and Shenzhen, which have reached 21.7%, 19.8%, 18.2%, and 20.9%, respectively. This indicates a broader economic malaise. The situation points to deep-seated issues beyond simple market fluctuations, with widespread business closures and unemployment exacerbating the downturn. This downturn is not confined to commercial real estate. The residential market is similarly affected, with significant drops in property values and rents. China Business News recently highlighted a case where a property near Shanghai's Lujiazui financial district, previously renting for 6,500 yuan, about $906 per month, saw its rent drop by 500 yuan, about $69.70, yet it still failed to attract tenants, underscoring the severity of the current real estate slump. Amid these challenges, experts like Wang He and Liang Xiaohua highlight the underlying factors: a lack of economic optimism and the need for businesses to cut costs drastically. The current market conditions are a stark departure from the bustling activity once characteristic of China's major cities, such as Shanghai and Beijing, now replaced by a palpable sense of desolation and struggle for survival. This economic and real estate crisis reflects broader issues within China's economy, suggesting a potential long-term impact without significant intervention or shifts in policy. The situation has caught the attention of international observers, including Bill Winters of Standard Chartered, who notes a growing confidence deficit towards China, both domestically and internationally, as the country navigates through these tumultuous times. Chinese-made EV owners struggle for power during Lunar New Year. Chinese EV owners found themselves in an awkward situation over the Lunar New Year holidays. Dozens of EVs scrambling for a single charging station and the EV lost power 5 meters away from charging stations became hot topics on Chinese social media on February 9th. In a video shared on February 8th, numerous EVs were queued up for a charging station at the Dashing service area in Yongzhou City, Hunan Province, with some drivers attempting to cut the line, further intensifying the disorder. Similar scenarios have previously played out. An automobile blogger shared videos showing Chinese EV drivers engaging in physical altercations over competition for charging stations. Numerous netizens commented, "Excuse me, But are EVs still in? Sure, EVs save on gasoline, but save no hassle. Chinese-made EVs appear to be surplus goods, quite subpar. A Chinese financial media JRJ reported on February 9 the multiple reasons for the lack of charging stations in China. While government subsidies have spurred rapid growth in the market for new EVs, the infrastructure for charging has lagged. Moreover, regional discrepancies exist in charging facility construction, with severe shortages in certain areas unable to meet demand. Furthermore, challenges like slow charging speeds and limited recharge mileage also impede the widespread adoption of EVs. According to the report, China's inventory of new EVs surpassed 17 million by 2023, marking a remarkable 117% growth compared to the previous year. Nonetheless, the public charging infrastructure lags far behind, with an average of just one charging station for every 7 electric vehicles, leaving EV owners with charging predicaments in service areas lacking adequate charging facilities. The motionless EV. According to Chinese media MyDrivers.com on February 8, for owners of new electric vehicles, the most agonizing distance in the world is spotting a charging station, but unable to charge. According to the report, EV driver Li Mengyao embarked on a journey on February 1 from Shenzhen to Wuhan for the Lunar New Year. Rain and snow extended the time it took for her trip. Throughout the journey, she had to recharge her vehicle 6 times. When she finally reached Hubei on February 3, Ms. Li's vehicle skidded and got stuck just 16 feet away from the charging station at noon. The report noted that it wasn't due to the vehicle running out of power. At midnight, a gas car also got stuck and the driver attempted to assist Ms. Li by pushing her vehicle, but their efforts were futile. Both owners were left with no choice but to wait in place for warmth. Meanwhile, 2 more new EVs arrived, only to find themselves also unable to move forward due to slippery conditions. It wasn't until daybreak that they managed to borrow a shovel from a nearby supermarket to extricate themselves from the situation. Expressing her frustration, Ms. Li exclaimed, "This is just too unfortunate." Readers' views varied. Numerous netizens have voiced concerns about the quality of Chinese-made EVs. Others believe that snowstorms were primarily to blame for the challenges faced by EVs. Let us know your thoughts on today's topic by leaving a comment below. If you found this video helpful, please share it with a friend. It inspires us to continue creating more quality and reliable content. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more interesting insights from China Truths. Thanks for tuning in.